Morning, Tuur. How are you, man?
Morning, Peter. Good. What is Azat Mard?
Just funny. It's a really appropriate hat for Bitcoiners.
Yeah?
By pure accident. So my son went to Leeds for university, and after about 6 months I went to visit him and take him shopping and buy him some clothes. And he took me into the store and he picked up this hat. He goes, "Oh, that's a cool hat. You should wear that." I was like, "I don't know the brand." He's like, "It's cool. Don't worry about it." I was like, "What does it mean?" He's like, "I don't know." So anyway, I was wearing the hat for about a year. And then I did an interview with Majid Nawaz. He was on Rogan, British guy.
Rings a bell, yeah.
Yeah, talks a lot about CBDCs. He's like, "Cool hat. Do you know what it means?" I was like, "No." He's like, "It means free man." I was like, "What?" "Yeah, it means free man. It's like Persian or something."
Really?
I was like, that's so appropriate for
That's
a
awesome.
Bitcoiner. Even though I live in the UK and we're...
That's awesome. So your son like kind of sensed the good vibes?
Well, it's funny. Rizzo said to me, Rizzo was like, "What is that hat you keep wearing? I feel like you're trying to send a message to Bitcoiners." I've got, do you know, I've got another one here. Do you want it? You can have it. I don't think I've ever worn it. I've got it in black.
Wait, the same words?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Do you wear hats?
Oh, you're talking to me. I thought you were anecdoting Pete Rizzo. Oh, yeah, of course. I'll have it.
right.
Oh, yeah. I love hats. Oh,
Yeah.
man. I'm such a sucker for any kind of swag and hats. I love hats.
All right, I've got this one in black. This is one I wear all the time. You don't want this.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
got all
yeah.
my gross hair wax.
I'll wear
on
it. Yeah.
But yeah, so it means free man.
How's that Mard? And there's I don't know how many, but there's definitely an Iranian community here in Austin. So it'll get spotted at some point.
Double check it's Persian. I'm not sure.
Maybe I should.
But yeah, it's kind of wrong because obviously I live in the UK and we aren't particularly free, and I haven't acted particularly free.
Well,
in
you
the
can
past.
aspire to be free.
Dude, I'm getting there. I tell you what, the final boss for me that like tipped me over the edge and went fuck all this shit was my local government, my local mayor. I mean, I've talked about it a lot in the pod. Do you know about me going to war with my local mayor?
No, but somehow it doesn't surprise me.
So he's interfering with my football team, right? So this new mayor came into power, and where we have our ground, it's council land, so it's a lease. But you tend to get 99-year leases because the council want to support sports in the community. We're next door to another team called Bedford Town, massive rivals. He had a meeting with their chairman, and afterwards came to us and said, "Oh, we're not going to renew your lease." It's like, "Okay, where are you going to put us?" And he didn't actually have a plan for us. It's like, if we're not here in 2 years, our club will fold because we don't have anywhere to play. And he constantly kept delaying meetings, not doing meetings, saying he would renew the lease, then he wouldn't renew the lease. And we're like, look, let's just be objective about this. Our team has got promoted 2 years in a row. We're the only team in the town with a ladies team. They've just got promoted. We've just secured $4.5 million of investment from the Winklevoss. We're investing in youth and kids football. We have a hardship fund for kids who can't play football. We give them money. The whole world, the whole Bitcoin world now knows where Bedford is, where they wouldn't have given a shit before, and they're visiting. We put on a conference. We sold all the hotel rooms out. Like, we're objectively good for the town. Your mandate's very clear as a mayor. It's to do the best for the town. And if you screw this up, you aren't. And he just kept screwing us around. Then he finally came to us with a lease, and he banned women from playing football there. And it had all these like arbitrary termination clauses which could get us out of the ground. So add that into the fact that I operate a couple of businesses locally, and I started to get exposed to how the council interferes with your business rates. So just an example, I'm about to open a cafe. My estimate is, as a business, it would turn over about 150,000 a year, razor thin profits. But we have to pay business rates, which is 16,000. So it's easily 10 to 15% tax before you've done any business.
Wow,
it's not like a corporation tax.
Yeah.
And then you've got to pay your staff, and give your staff holidays. Then you've got to pay your council. So then you've got to pay this thing called, sorry, I'm fucking owning this. They've got another thing called the bid. This thing I found out called the bid, where every business in the town centre has to pay 2% of what their rates they're paying into a thing called the bid. And it's a local council controlled but independently run company, like non-profit company whose job is to promote the town and drive business. But obviously it's not free market business, so they're crap at what they do. Nobody likes it. So it's really racketeering, right? It's just a racket.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If there's no accountability, because it's where's the limit? Where does it stop?
What I've come to realize is like the local council is a group of people who are unqualified, not all of them, but largely unqualified for what they're doing. So if you look at the mayor, he essentially has dictatorial powers over the town. He can do anything he wants, pretty much. Yet he has no experience in these things he's making decisions on. He's never run a successful business. He's basically a farmer who has worked on his family's farm, and yet he has all these powers. So it's crazy. And then they have the council, which is, some of the councillors I've met are great. Some of the council officers are great, but some are terrible. And so it was like the final straw for me. I'm like, I'm done with this shit. Like, no more excuses. These people interfere and they just get in the way of business.
And so what does that mean?
Well, so right now I'm taking them on. So I'm attacking them publicly. And I was like, can I become like the unofficial mayor of Bedford, in that I just do what I want outside of them? So I've launched this Bedford Future Fund where I just put £51,000 in, about, I don't know, $65,000, $70,000, where I'm going to give money to like young, talented local people who want to do like sports, business, education. So we've done 2 grants. We gave it one to a swimmer, very good young swimmer. She wanted to go to the World Games in Rio. She can't afford it. Her parents can't afford it. So we gave her £1,000, paid for her to go. She won 2 silvers and a gold. And so that's cool.
Amazing.
There's a young racing driver. Man, you'll love this story. I feel like this is wrong. I'm meant to be interviewing you, but let me tell you this story because I know you'll love this.
Yeah.
So this lady writes to me and she tells me about her son who's a racing car driver. He's like 14 years old. And she's looking for sponsorships because it's really expensive. And I'm like, cool, I'm about to set up this Bedford Development Fund, just apply there. And then the next day I have to go to Tesco, which is like Walmart, to pick up burgers for my football team. And so I go, because we need like 200, I have to go in there. And so I'm looking for a manager, can't find someone. And so I go to the meat department, there's a lady stacking the shelf, and I just say to her, hi, can I find the manager, please? Because I want to buy a lot of burgers for my football team. She goes, oh, I know your football team. My daughter plays for them. I was like, cool. Oh, that's great. And she says, yeah, I wrote to you yesterday about my son, the racing car driver. I was like, what? Like, there's like 5 supermarkets in Bedford. I could have gone into any one at any time, in any aisle, but I do it at the time with it. She's there. So anyway, I speak to the manager, and I go back to her and I say, so tell me about your son. How good is he? And she's like, he's really good. You know, he's got big teams looking at him. He's winning all his races, but it's expensive. It's £500 a race, like £5,000 a year. And she gets no help from the boy's dad. And so she just works every shift she can to pay for it. So I was like, look, perfect, you're a grant. So, you know, we've given him a grant. So basically, this is what I'm doing. I'm using the power of Bitcoin, the appreciation of Bitcoin that I've got, and the and the growth in money from things like the events. And I'm just putting it into this to do stuff in the town, which the mayor isn't doing and the council aren't doing. So that's my plan to be like this.
Yeah. That's, I mean, in a way, it's like, you know, you're the market, because people often think that capitalism is all about like, oh, you're only looking at the numbers and it's all about profit. But no, the markets include charity, and it includes generosity and community and all that. And so, yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. So I wish I could have joined, because Natalie told me about you know, the get together you guys had.
Come next year.
Bedford. Yeah, I'd love to.
It worked really well. I think everyone enjoyed it because there's a lot of conferences now. But the second day where everyone goes to watch the football is really good. We'd love to have you there. It's be next April. I'm just going to, Danny, pencil in.
I played soccer for the underdogs in Bruges.
You played
soccer.
Come on, you're from Europe. Try that again.
Oh, football, yeah.
Come on, man. You're from Europe. What are you doing?
Trying to adjust, I guess. Football. Yeah, when I was 9 up until I was 13, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I was, apparently my level of skill was such that it took me 2 years to find out that they were actually playing matches. They just weren't asking me because I wasn't good enough. Jeez. I was like, you guys play matches? Like, yeah, on Saturday.
Well, we'll get you there.
Yeah.
So I told you I was with David Bailey a couple of days ago, and he's like, no, you need to run for mayor. You need to run for mayor. You need to take him out, and you need to buy Bitcoin and have the council own Bitcoin. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll borrow like 100 million, buy Bitcoin, and then time lock it for 10 years and have a period of probably 4 years where they're yelling at me.
Yeah.
And then like the next 6 years, I'll be hopefully Bitcoin does its thing, I'll be clear through.
Wow. I mean, it is. I mean, if you think about who were the big power brokers throughout history, it was like people talk about the oil barons, and they talk about the railroad lords, and then recently the tech moguls. Those are the power brokers. But I mean, the power tends to go with the money, and so I don't think David is really crazy to think in these kind of terms. There's a benevolent way to deal with power, especially if power is being abused. And then you happen to have support of the world and the best money in the world. Then why not?
Yeah, I mean, we need more good, benevolent people doing good things with power and money, and too often it just doesn't happen. I think like there are I think sprouts of hope. I think Millet is a sprout of hope. I think Bukele is a sprout of hope. There's other good, interesting politicians. I'm kind of feeling it here in the US that the US is at a crossroads right now, where you have a big election coming up. It will be a shit show.
Oh yeah, people have been asking, like, can we just clone this guy Millet? Like, is there a way to, like, where is he? Where can we vote on him? But yeah, it is kind of, with Trump is saying nice things, but in terms of particularly economic policy or Bitcoin, he's saying nice things, but then you just don't know how things going to go.
But he can't run for re-election afterwards, right?
I know, 2 terms and that's it.
I'm sure he'll try and find a way, but he can't, and Biden will be done. So I feel like the US is at a crossroads now. It's like, this is like, who's next? There's probably some great people.
What do you mean Biden will be done? You don't think they can like roll him up on a wheelchair and like make him like speak with AI or something?
I mean, he might even be like that. I don't know if you saw that video of that lady who took her dead husband into the bank to try and get a check signed or something. I mean, that's what Biden will be like.
Yeah, in a mall or something, right?
I think after this is it's a bit like the Beyond Borg, and was it McEnroe was the old rivalry, and it's Messi and Ronaldo, it's Biden and Trump. Like, they'll both be done 4 years after. Yeah. And what my hope is for Trump, which I don't have a lot of hope, because you shouldn't put hope in any politician, but he might, let's hope, he might at least put some good policy in place with regard to Bitcoin. And knowing he can't get re-elected, actually focus on just doing a good job. Good policy.
Isn't it funny with US presidents that while they're in power, you always think like, this guy's the worst guy ever. Like I remember with Bush, and then, just all these names, like every time you were like, this is the worst guy. And then the next guy comes out and it's like, the previous guy wasn't so bad.
I think there was like about a year of Obama. I thought, oh, he's okay. And there was a small part of Clinton where I thought he's okay, but they're all terrible. But
and then Obama became Obama. That's one of those things with the liberals is like they say a lot of nice things, but then they still drop bombs everywhere. It's scary.
Every president has dropped bombs. I think
that's fair. That's fair.
I do sometimes think about it and wonder why is it that good people, supposedly good people, cannot stay good and for the cause? Like, does the machine just chew you up in a way? You
that's
just cannot.
I think. Yeah,
you cannot be effective.
And also, I think it's also that it was actually, I think, Alex Jones recently who said it in his Tucker interview, that this idea that corrupt people tend to want to do their thing, and they conspire and they snowball until things get really bad. And that's when, in the last hour, is when the good guys rally and get together and, really come in. Because it is like, nobody voluntarily would want to have, I mean, I wouldn't have a life in politics. It's, like, imagine being on that council, like, and living your whole life. But it's like, but if things are so bad that you're literally seeing everybody around you suffer, then you see people step up and like do the right thing. Maybe 20 years ago or whatnot, in a different country, Millet would have never ran for president. He would have just happily do his karaoke thing and be a goalkeeper and just have a career with fun people. And instead, he has to, fight all these communists.
Yeah, I think that's what it is I don't want to be the mayor of Bedford. Like, I enjoy my life. I enjoy running my football team. I enjoy doing interviews. Enjoy creating businesses. The mayor is a hard job where you've got to deal with hard problems, where you've got competing forces of aggressive conservatives and slightly commie lefties and champagne socialists and like stupid green policy. Like everyone's putting you into the direction to do something, and trying to keep everyone happy is really difficult. Plus, there's lots of like just shit stuff you have to do. I don't want to do it, but I have I live in a town that I love. I think everyone knows by now I love Bedford, right? The town centre is in managed decline. So many shops are closed, and a new one opens. It doesn't stay open long enough.
Oh yeah.
Why is that? If they've got essentially paying 15 to 20 grand of additional business rates, well, we need to get rid of that because nobody's benefiting.
Yeah.
But can you get rid of that? The other thing I found out is the councils have a decent budget, but a lot of councils are going broke over the UK. So, don't hold me to this. It could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. You might want to look this one up, Kurt. By the way, we have Kurt standing in for Danny. Something like 70% of council budgets is for social care, which is the old, it's like children in abusive families or families who've got addiction problems, mental health issues, and it's an ever-growing part of the budget. And if I did kind of run for mayor, I'd want to be as close to libertarian as possible, free market as possible. But how do you come in when 70% of your budget is for that? It doesn't leave much for everything else.
Yeah.
How do you, here we go. The 37 councils in England, county areas have an average budgeted.
And it's also like, if you're even going to mention diminishing that, like you look like the biggest asshole, right?
Let's just read.
You hate the poor.
I'm going to read so just read the quote for people listening. The 37 councils in England, county areas have on average budgeted to spend 69% of their entire budget on just adult social care and children's services, rising to 76% in some councils. That's a large, and that's a growing amount. So like, where can you cut that? Okay, look, you're not going to cut child services.
Honestly, what Malaya said is like, look, there is no money. Like it's a fiction to believe that there is money. There really isn't. We're broke. And I agree. Like in Europe isn't ready, electorally to make jumps like that. But one example that came to mind as to for me at least, that really drives the point home that when the government gets involved in things, it actually tends to make it worse rather than better. And so like, for example, and this is a different sector, but I remember growing up in Bruges, Belgium, there were a lot of little secondhand stores where you could go, and it wasn't really antiques, but it was that kind of thing where now you find it more on Facebook and stuff. But this is even before social media, they got crowded out because the government came in and was like, we're gonna basically create a goodwill. It's called goodwill here in the US, and I'm sure there's maybe a similar thing in the UK where the government basically subsidizes these secondhand stores, and they all have the same brand, and then they employ people that have a tough time finding employment. And so what happened was the quality of the selection went down massively because of it's become politicized, and so they just take all the best stuff for themselves before they even put it out there.
It was a free market.
The service is terrible. And so somebody knew growing up, like a Gen Z person, if you would propose to them like, why don't we just abolish all the subsidies for these secondhand stores? They'd be like, what are you talking about? I love my secondhand stores. Like, but then how do you explain the way it was like before? Right. And I think there's totally a parallel with how the poor were taken care of and how children were taken care of in poorer communities. There is that infrastructure that grows organically, but it's hard to explain that to people.
And it does happen. Like we have food banks in the UK, and it feels like a recent phenomenon, doesn't it, Kurt? The food banks, and I don't feel like it was there a decade ago. It probably was, but it's now a big thing.
Yeah,
it's a huge thing.
Needed, I bet.
Yeah, it's needed. When I made my film, we went to a food bank, and I met a nurse in there. That's somebody fully employed as a nurse, working day in, day out. It was post-COVID, so she'd done the whole COVID period, but she doesn't have enough money to feed herself. Like, my mum was a nurse. Yeah. Like, my mum and dad at times struggled, but my mum didn't have to go to food banks.
That's a shame. She's fully employed, right? She has a full-time job and she can't pay the bills.
You should be able, as a fully employed nurse, be able to afford your rent, your food, your bills, and have some left over for some nice things in life. But she can't. That's the managed decline of Inflation, I get it. I see it.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, I see it. And I've seen this growth of food banks. But the thing about the food banks is they are fully independent. They're always charities and run charitably. And, I'll go into Sainsbury's and get an extra bag and give it to them. And so, the free market steps up to feed people who can't feed themselves. So it does happen. But I just think day one, you become mayor and you say, okay, can you ever look up what the Bedford budget is? But say it's 50 million and they're spending 40 million on social care. I don't think you can day one go, I've cut that entire budget. See what happens. I think you have to manage
phase it out or
Yeah.
something, or have some kind of plan to. Yeah, no, I mean, but the luxury that Millet had in a way is because the inflation is so crazy that it's almost, people already know that it's true. There is actually no money. Like, yeah, they can print more, but it's more obvious. Whereas in the West so far, our currencies aren't that bad. And people are very addicted to this stuff, addicted. And I even looked at a while ago, the Belgian government budget, and only 20% was core services, 20% of the entire budget. It's like, the justice system, the police, like all the core services, and 80% is basically welfare.
Creep.
Welfare. And then that's crept up so much, right?
And as welfare creeps up, so does tax. I mean, if I go through the list of, here we go. Here's the budget for the council. So, what is that? Is that adult services of 56.4 million? Corporate services, 23.3 million, 35 million on children's services. They're spending 27 million on the environment. Is that 4 million on finance? So the total director budget is 146 million. Finance is a 6 million budget requirement. So I wonder what that finance is. Is that paying off loans?
I bet that's interest on the debt.
Perhaps, yeah. Although the thing is, Bedford's one of the councils that doesn't have a lot of debt. The Lib Dem previous mayor reduced it. And so revenue support grants.
Yeah, only like a 1% paying off interest. That's not bad.
So they're bringing in 109 million from council tax and 41 million from interest, from business rates. Like, I already look at it and think, okay, there must be things that can be cut or done, like finance. What are they spending 4 million on finance? Let's find out. How do we get that to 3 million? What's the 27 million they're spending on the environment? Like, how much of that's important? How much of it's nonsense?
Well, and you could maybe identify businesses that actually directly or indirectly serve already the poor and the kids and just cut their taxes.
Well, so they've raised their taxes by 5% this year, the council tax. I'd love to go and say, I'm going to reduce it by 10%. Be the only council in the country to be reducing it, reduce it by 10%. And then it's like, okay, we're going to have to save 10 million from here. Where do we save it? But I think it can be done. But the problem you've got is, the mayor and the council don't think about this the way we think about it. And I think about it because I've had the luxury of spending time with people like you for the last 7-8 years, and I've kind of gradually learned. They always go, this is our budget. This is what we need to spend. Okay, we need more. So our two options, we raise the council tax or we borrow more money. They don't go, where do we cut this shit? And so I'd leave children's services alone for now. That's probably the one area I wouldn't touch. And I'd go through everything and say, what can we cut? And I bet there's loads.
Sure.
I bet the real challenge is I want to get rid of people and I can't get rid of people.
Well, yeah, you see that too. I mean, honestly, I don't know much about politics, but one of the things I've noticed with the Malay government is that because the will is there, they're just identifying a lot of corruption. They're like, hey, here's a fleet of 200 cars that were bought for no reason. Like, let's just sell that stuff. So I'm sure if you have that mindset and you have some good people, you can actually, because you're not worried about, like, you're not that small that this is your entire life and you want to grease all the right palms. You can just go in there and be like, I'm here to serve the people. I'm just going to weed out the corruption where I can.
Yeah. The best way of putting it is that, I don't need the money. I'm uncorruptible, but I like the idea of like going in and throwing some hand grenades about and making some change. Going and like fully testing, like, is everything that Tuur and Stefan and Saifedean and all these people I've listened to, are they right? Let's go and put it to the test.
Right.
Let's go and get rid of all this shit and see what happens.
Well, I mean, it's funny, like even because you know how people who are critical of libertarians, they're always like, but who's going to build the roads, right? There's actually evidence that the UK's roads were freaking terrible for centuries, and the reason was that farmers and landowners were not allowed to basically sell road services. And so then one of the kings, I think it was a king, abolished that stipulation in the law and said basically, if you have land, you can build a road and you can charge some money for it. And like in a span of several decades, the quality roads that the UK has today was built. The whole network was built privately. And people just don't know this.
What would you say is the best road in the UK? Do you know?
Personally, the A1.
So I think the best road in the UK is the M6 toll. It's the only, we have one toll road in the whole of the UK. Can you double check that I'm correct on one toll road? But I think we have one, it's the only one I know of, right? And it was a big deal when it got built. But essentially the M6, a big motorway, would go to Birmingham and it would wrap around Birmingham and go up to the north of Manchester. Birmingham's a big city. I think it's the second biggest city in the UK. At rush hour, it was gridlock around there. There's actually one junction called Spaghetti Junction, which is nuts. You should get a Spaghetti Junction up and show him. And so they decided to build a toll road, which just cut across that. First time ever. It's a brilliant road. It costs you about £8, I think. I could be wrong, but it costs you about £8, and you cut that whole traffic out every time. The road's never too busy. It's really well. It's the best road in the country.
Yep.
But it's a private road, and you have to pay.
And that's the thing, is that markets create options for consumers. Like you don't have to take the toll road.
All right. So look, this the Dartford crossing. I don't really consider that a toll road. It's a bridge. It's basically a bridge and most of those, look, they're all tunnels and bridges. Look at them. For the people listening, Kurt's just pulled up the RAC tolls. The actual M6 toll is a toll road. The M25 Dartford crossing is a bridge. Bath Eastern, Humber, they're both bridges. Tyne is so look, they've figured, look, to build a bridge or a tunnel will charge you to go through it, but they've not done it on roads.
Yeah, and here, I don't know if you noticed, but here in Texas, there's a bunch of toll roads.
Yeah.
And it basically means that to go from A to B, now you have 3 options instead of 1.
Yeah, get up Spaghetti Junction. You got to see.
Are you a fan of Fawlty Towers at all?
Yeah,
I just remember there's a scene where there's like an American coming in, and he's like complaining about the road, like it's such a tiny road, and he mentions the M6 or something, like one of the huge highways. Like, what is this little? And then the joke is that
look at this.
Oh,
so that's called Spaghetti Junction.
Yeah.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like an Ethereum roadmap.
Yes. Although they can work these kind of things. But yeah, that looks a mess.
The other thing I've noticed is, like, we have these motorways that got built. Sorry, Kurt, I keep asking a lot here. Can you ask how long the M1 took to build, the original one? This is the main spine motorway in the country, right? So what I don't understand is I see new roads being built around Bedford sometimes. And there's one I can think of in particular. It's about 2 miles long. I felt like it took 2 to 3 years to build. And I was going on thinking, why is this taking so long? And there'll be often times where there's no one there. You know, maybe like certain times of the day they've just stopped.
Yep.
Like at 4 o'clock, they're done. And I was just like, I don't understand why this is taking so long. My assumption is probably exactly what your assumption would be, is that the government are paying for it. And so the contractors can be particularly lazy because they don't care, because they're going to get paid whatever. And there's a lot of red tape in actually building the road. That's my assumption.
Also the more a project costs, the more political power there is. Like, what did the Winter Olympics cost? What was it, $8 billion or something crazy in Russia? It's like, well, because then all the buddies get paid. It's a perfect excuse to funnel tax money to your buddies.
When I was in Argentina, my friend, what's it say? Okay, this is the M1. It was constructed in 4 phases. Got any timescales on it?
It says no one knows when it actually starts.
But I feel like they probably built the M1 quicker than they built this little A road. So anyway, Juan was taking me around. He showed me, we're in the center of Buenos Aires, and they were like relaying the road. And he said, "Do you know what's funny about this?" I was like, "What?" He said, "They're always relaying these roads." I was like, "What?" Yes, this is giving jobs to the construction people who work on the maintenance.
Yeah.
And the union people get their palms greased, and they give you their votes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the way to keep people voting. I was like, it's fucking stupid.
That's why I laugh when somebody like Biden or whoever is touting like, oh, we got almost full employment and very low unemployment. It's like, in Soviet Russia there was full employment. Like it's not hard to keep people busy with a bunch of tax money, right? You're just bossing them around basically in all these public works. It's the easiest thing to create full employment.
Yeah, but how do we?
But then you have these nurses that they have a full job and they don't even make pay.
Well, it's become another whole problem. Our National Health Service. Again, can you get up the NHS budget over the years? So I used to be a huge fan of the NHS, and I still am in some ways, and most British people are. And look, we can say that a government subsidised or a government paid for health system is anti-free market and blah, blah, blah. But I'm pretty sure if you had a referendum on whether to keep or lose the National Health Service, let's go back a decade, I think over 90%, 95% of people say, yeah, keep it.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
yeah.
Because, we are still a society, and everybody likes the fact that whoever you are, whatever your situation is, if you break your leg, you're not going to lose your house, right? If you have a heart attack, you're not going to lose your house. We don't have really expensive insurance and these deductibles that all the problems that people in the US face with.
Yeah,
health
but
insurance.
but you probably know that the US healthcare system is
Was.
way overregulated.
Yeah, of
like
course.
it's not a free market either.
So this is the thing about the NHS, the budget. So that's since 19
Real
56.
terms, so that's even corrected for inflation.
Yeah, corrected for inflation. So essentially their budget's gone from about 12.5 billion in 1956, in 2017, 150 billion. It's much higher now. I think it's over 200 billion now.
That's like within one lifetime. That is insane.
Yeah, if you go to Kurt, if you look up the if you search for the spending, so OBR, spending and receipts. So that's the first one, spending and receipts for 24-25 this year. So they're admitting there's going to be an 87 billion deficit. So they're just admitting they're just going to overspend, which they do every fucking year, which means more borrowing. But if you scroll down even further, this is the thing that really pisses me off. So this is their spend, okay? So health and social care, 179.6 billion. So it's gone up and up and up and up every year. But the quality has gone down, the quality of care has dropped, and the waiting list has increased. So like, as much as I'm a historical fan of the NHS, I'm aware of that. That's add to the fact that two other things have happened. Like, for example, I have private healthcare now because it's not that expensive. It's like £200 a month for me and the kids. And it's the best treatment. There's no deductibles. You're straight in. And so it's worth doing. But we've had, this is the free market. You'll love this. A place opened up on our high street, the main high street in the town, called the Medic Centre. They were doctors who used to be at the NHS doctors, and they knew the services are terrible. You phone up for a doctor's appointment, 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And so they've opened up.
And probably like you had to then sit in the waiting room for hours too to even get to see the person on the day of.
Yes.
Yeah,
but now you phone them up. Most of the time they'll see you same day. It's £50 for an appointment, which I know it's not everyone can afford that, but a bunch of people can. And every time you go there, they're building out more and more rooms. So despite the fact in our taxes we're paying for the NHS, people are happy now to pay that bit extra. And so they're growing as a service. This is like a competing free market service.
It's what you see in Argentina as well. Like I remember being in Buenos Aires, being surprised at how many middle-class people send their kids to private schools. And you would think like such a poor country, but the quality of the monopoly of the government has gone down so much that people are like, well, I am willing to pay a little.
The thing that always makes me most angry in this one, right, is where is the debt interest?
Yep, the second one.
89 billion.
Yep.
Education, 84.9 billion. We spend more on debt interest than we spend on educating our kids.
Well, and in the US, it's even more than the military budget now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And it's like, how have you got to a stage where we've got teachers who aren't being paid enough, who are going through inflation, collapsing standards of education, yet massive increases in debt interest. It's like, how fucking stupid are these people?
Well, I mean, for a long time, interests were going down, right? And so it just felt like you could just do this forever, especially in the political mindset. It's like you only think about this election cycle. You don't think 10 years ahead. So people just piled up the debt when the going was good.
They're borrowing from the future of our children.
Oh, totally.
Like that whole thing, as Jeff Booth talks about it, they're essentially borrowing from the future.
Yeah.
You know, we're now in a position whereby they're talking about bringing back conscription in the UK.
Yes, I read it just today, right?
Which
public service, that's the word, right?
Well, so, by the way, there's part of it I like. We've got a lot of little shitheads, and I've got 2 teenagers. The idea of them spending a bit of time in military boot camp, I kind of like for a little bit of discipline. But like generally, the idea is terrible and stupid. But yeah, they want to bring things like that back, and it's like, what are you doing to our young people? You've locked them up for 2 years, and yes. I was part of that thing that felt it was good at the time, but we locked them up for 2 years. We've taken away all their parks and youth clubs. We've given them supercomputers to sit and stare at all day. We've reduced their education. We've reduced the jobs available, and we've made it impossible for them to get on the housing ladder unless their parents can help them. We've absolutely this is what we screwed our kids with. It's like, at what point do we all turn around and go, this isn't working?
Well, yeah, and it's kind of scary too, because like the less people have and the less they have to lose, the more you get these radical things, you know, like the insurgencies and civil wars and all those kind of things. You know, it's highly necessary that we get an alternative, you know, and that's why I'm so passionate about Bitcoin. You know,
well, I don't want to wait until the UK is like Argentina for us to get radical.
Yeah.
And also, I hate that word radical sometimes because it makes you sound like a nutter.
I don't mind radical. Radical means to the root. It's from Latin radis, which is the root of a tree. And so you go to the root of the thing. Right. But of course, they always, you know, the interpretation of words always get, you know, turned around and it makes you look like you're crazy. But no, you can be, I'm a radical.
Well, I am a radical. But I actually think these people are morons. And it's like, time to end this. It's like there was a really good interview there's a show called The Rest is Politics in the UK, and it's Rory Stewart, who was like a Conservative Prime Minister candidate, and Alistair Campbell, who was Tony Blair's spin doctor PR man. And so they're from opposite poles in politics, and they go through all the big issues of the week. And do you know what? They discuss them well. It's kind of interesting. You get this good interpretation of it. But they did an interview with John Major, who was the Prime Minister after Margaret Thatcher. Seemed as a bit boring, but gave this fascinating interview. And he said the biggest problem with politics today, like, bear in mind for the libertarians, this is politics, it has to exist. Obviously, the biggest problem with politics is that it exists. But he said the biggest problem with politicians is, and I'll try and remember this correctly, but he said Labour politicians would usually have come from the community and the unions and would understand the deep issues within those communities and fight for them. And the Conservative politicians usually came from military service or successful businesses.
Yeah.
And so they had experience of economics and discipline. He said, you don't get that anymore. Everyone is now a career politician. It's somebody who joins the Young Conservatives or Young Labour.
Yeah.
They don't go out in the business world and get any real experience. They end up going through the ranks in the political circles, and then they end up making decisions on things they have no experience of at all.
It's like what people call champagne socialism, right? It's like and you get these dynasties of the son of and the grandson of, and they've always lived in this. It's almost like the Communist Party, right? It's like its own little bubble that you grew up in, and yeah, it's a huge problem. Yeah.
It kind of goes back to what Safety says, bring back the monarchy then. If you're going to do that, at least let us cut their heads off if they do a shit job.
If I had to choose between communism and monarchy, like, yeah, I mean, I'd choose monarchy. Yeah.
It's funny, when I first got into Bitcoin, I would hear people throw around commie a lot. I was like, what are you on about? We're not communists, we're a democracy. And they're like, yeah, you're commies. I kind of get it now. I kind of understand what they were saying because of this encroachment on civil liberties, increase in surveillance. Like in the UK right now, we have no free speech. We have a massive increase in surveillance. We have massive increases in taxation. And the government's getting more and more into our lives, telling us what we can and can't do. And so I kind of get it now. I see that organic slide into, we don't have communist leaders coming out with, communist manifestos. and taken over the means of production directly, right?
Yeah.
But it's being done like a subtle sleight of hand.
Well, I mean, one of the 10 planks of communism, which was kind of the plan, right? What are we going to do? What do we need to do with the Communist Party? Going back to Engels, which Engels wrote, was central banking, and so it is really a way to nationalize the means of financial production, right? So the financial system in de facto has been nationalized. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, where do you draw the line? And Mises has this little book called I think it's All Roads Lead to Socialism. No, the middle of the road leads to socialism. And so he really in detail describes this process of where you start with a little bit of interventionism, but then because of the interventionism, there's all kinds of new problems, and then that invites more intervention. And that's Europe's disease, right? It's like it is the road to totalitarianism. And so, yeah, I mean, Jordan Peterson, he does have a point that, yeah, you think the fascists are bad, but you know, if you look at it in context, they're actually not as bad as the communists, because like it's just the road to slavery. And then if you have some, I'm not advocating for this at all. Like I hope we can prevent it, but just to see some things in context, like, you know, what were some of these fascists saying? It's like they were like, let's fight the communists, right? They were like, it was like a pandemic of communism that was happening. So it's just, you know, what I hope is that instead of having these two tribes, that we have that like a real solution, which is free markets. You know, you open things up and free speech and but then you do need the tough medicine economically for a while, which is what Millet was so brilliantly doing in its opening speech. It was like saying, like, look, you're an addict, and like you're gonna go through withdrawals here. It's gonna be tough. That's what he was saying.
That's what Giacomo said to me a very long time ago. He said it is an addiction, and he said you have to get clean. You have to go through withdrawal. And I think a lot. I interviewed Saylor the other day, and I think there's something he said in that interview that I've been thinking about a lot since. He said volatility is good. And he's saying that really with regards to Bitcoin. But I think he's saying it with regards to like most things. You need volatility. It is the dampening out of volatility in society, which is essentially what communism is. Communism is trying to dampen out volatility. It wants everything the same. And so that kind of, that slow, slippery slide into communism or socialism from a place of democracy is what I'm seeing happening by the trying to dampen this volatility. And you see it in, okay, what we have to do is we have to try and redistribute the income. That's dampening out the volatility, right? You can't say mean words because we don't want people upset. Let's dampen out the volatility.
Exactly.
And so I think that's what governments are trying to, I think that's why they come to the center. They have their own volatility. You know, Conservatives come to the center, Labour come to the center, Conservatives are terrible in the center, Labour win. Labour take us back a little bit more to the, it should be the left the other way. And so, because that's bringing back the volatility, people get fed up at their socialist bullshit, and the hardline conservatives come back in with some hardline conservative policies. So they are volatile, but their job is constantly trying to dampen out the volatility, keep everybody happy. How do I keep that person happy and that person happy? Oh, that person, they don't want to work. Oh, well, then we'll just give them money not to work. Yeah, and so basically, let's make volatility great again.
No, it's true, and but it requires strong people who are willing to take their own volatility, and that's the problem. Is that I mean, I think honestly, I do think it's a little bit easy to just point at the politicians because people do elect them, and I think people are also afraid of volatility, and there's a lot of anxiety in society, and people don't know how strong they are in many ways. And so it's I don't know, in some ways these crises are to some extent showing people like, hey, I can do this. Like I was like, imagine you're young and you're like, what if there was a pandemic and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, now we had that, And so I think that's part of why when you watch these movies, these from the 50s and the 60s, you saw like The Great Escape. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I love that film.
Yeah, I mean, so there's that like, basically it's a bad ending. They all pretty much die or get imprisoned, but there's that kind of pride and fight and optimism, and like there's like you just do the right thing because it's the right thing. Like those actors and those writers and whatever, these were people who lived through the war, like there is a kind of you learn something about yourself sometimes.
Well,
and I'm not saying we need war, right? But I'm just
No.
saying, that volatility is part of life.
But we've kind of had this pseudo civil war over the last few years, and I think we're coming out of it. But I think a large part of that was the cancel culture era, where people became afraid to say things. Because if you said the wrong thing, you're an actor, you won't act again.
Yep.
If you like, how many Republican actors are there?
Yep.
Even Matthew McConaughey, who's like basically the only one, he doesn't say what he really thinks. He can't because he'll get cancelled by Hollywood. But I think we're coming out of the cancel culture era, and I think one of the biggest issues is I've had the benefit, as I said earlier, of coming down this Bitcoin rabbit hole, meeting people like you and being introduced to things I've never heard of. I don't think if I discovered Bitcoin, I would have heard of Rothbard and Mises. And I'm not saying I've studied it, but I definitely wouldn't have considered libertarianism as an idea. I wouldn't have felt empowered like Bitcoiners have empowered me to say, you know what, you can tell people to fuck off. I'm not dealing with this. I don't think most people think that. I think most people they're trying to get through their day, financially survive in a world of high inflation, hopefully have a holiday each year, spend a bit of time with their kids. And when an election comes, they're like, well, they're shit, so I'll go for those. They don't think there's an alternative whereby you're empowered to fight back. This is my message for the people of Bedford. I'm about to write a manifesto. Where it's like, you don't have to vote for any of these people. You don't work for them. They work for you. And it's a duty and an honor, and they have to serve in our best interest. If they're not doing a good job, let's fucking get rid of them. So yeah.
Hear, hear.
Power to the people.
Hear, hear.
So does Bitcoin fix all this, Tuur?
No, I don't think so. But it is. I mean, my presentation or speech or whatever in Prague is going to be titled "Bitcoin is Europe's Mithril." You know, Mithril, like
No.
the chainmail from Lord of the Rings. Yeah, that Frodo is given, and at some point he gets stung by this giant spider, and it's the mithril that helps him survive. But yeah, so that's the idea, that it's not an offensive weapon, but it's a very powerful protection that you can put on yourself and your family, and that allows you to make it through things that you wouldn't thought were possible, right? In a world of fiat and brainwashing and all that. So yeah, I do think Bitcoin is enormously empowering.
Do you look across? Obviously, you're European, but do you look across to Europe from here and almost pity us?
I mean, there is that saying, right? The sick old man Europe. It is, and I sense that also from the Americans. Like, there's a lot of sympathy, but there's also kind of like, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you doing? And it's hard when you live there. I lived there for 30 years, and so it's hard when you actually live there day to day to see how fucked up things are. But yeah, it is really bad. And part of what's difficult too is, I think that Europe, the common denominator of Europe is, in a way, it's the people who stayed behind, right? Whenever there was a crisis, people would move out, and that's why the Americas are so much more dynamic. And I do include Latin America. They're so much more dynamic because it's a continent of immigrants, whereas Europe is where, in a way, they are preserving a lot of like, it's the cradle of civilization. That there's so much, like, we need Europe for, like, I don't know, there's so much there to get, and that people are working to preserve. But on the other hand, there's so much trauma and disease and tribalism that is there. And so it scares me, honestly. I think there could be another war. I don't even know which way, who against who, but yeah, it's scary because we haven't even seen the worst. We haven't seen bank runs and things like that.
The interesting thing is, my Bitcoin friends from America who've not been to London, when they go, just chatting to them about their experience, they always tend to say, "Oh, I had a great time. It's really nice. People are really nice. They're really friendly. Like, things just work." So there are things about it that people really like.
Oh yeah, me too.
I think Breedlove put it in a good way when he said, America's like a petulant teenager, and Europe's like a wise old man. In that, America's been spending its time finding itself, like being a radical and a revolutionary, whereas we've been through all that. But we're now at this point where I think the people of Europe are brilliant. I can go to Belgium or Germany and France, and we get on. We're great. Service is good. The restaurants are good. The food is good. It is the bureaucrats that are squeezing that out. It's like with a towel, they're kind of squeezing it out. In that they've tried to have these harmonized tax laws across Europe are absolutely dumb.
I would disagree with you. Like, I agree it's the bureaucrats who squeeze it out, but I think it's a codependent relationship.
Okay, that's fair.
And the people are letting it happen. Because like that's the difference here, is that there's so much more pushback when the bureaucrats try to, take two steps. Like, there's so much pushback to at least try and get it back, to 30% of what it was. And so it is happening here too, but
I think the French are pushing back.
I mean, yeah, but the worry that I have is that it just becomes another tribe that moves in. Like the French Revolution, it's so scary when you read about it. It's like, oh, we got rid of the Ancien Regime and now we got the Enlightenment. It's like a lot of babies were thrown away with the bathwater there. Like that was scary, and it still reverberates. Or like Napoleon, it's like, oh, Napoleon came in, but like 5 million people died in the wake of him.
So what kind of revolution is needed then?
An individual one, really, where we just work on ourselves and we kind of find humility again. Like, I think there is a kind of an innate humility to the Bitcoin movement, where the cypherpunk said, you don't have to wave flags in the street and give big speeches. Like, just write code, be active in the market and in your community and contribute to open source code and build better tools. And then just, take care of yourself and your family. Like, if people stop meddling with other people's businesses, that's kind of what we want in the big picture. So you try to lead by example. So I do think humility is kind of a big one. It's like, that's the delusion of the central planner, is to think that he just has the answer for everyone, Yeah. So I think Bitcoin is a great tool for that, but I don't know what the solution, like, when I look at the Israeli issue there, I don't know what the solution is.
I think part of what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you discover Bitcoin, you really go down that rabbit hole. You discover more than just money. You discover about yourself, and you're talking about these kind of like side effects of Bitcoin, where you do feel empowered.
Yeah, if you're open for it, you can use that. Yeah, you can use Bitcoin to like, wow. Or even when you're, like you said about your own journey, about being confronted with all these like radical ideas, like, then you can pause and be like, whoa, what is that? Like, how am I feeling? Like, whoa.
But it does,
because I remember I had a friend when I was like 20 who voted for the like Flemish Bloc, which is considered to be extreme right, and they were even not allowed to ever be in the ruling coalition, and I remember feeling physically ill when he told me that. Like, literally, it's like I'm gonna puke. So anyway, I think with Bitcoin, like, there's a lot of conventional beliefs that will be challenged, and so I think that's an opportunity.
And it's coming at the right time, because you put out a tweet. I think it was.
Oh, sorry, and I just want to add that it's not just that; it's all that weird stuff. But then there's the reward as well that's tied in. That's what's so beautiful, right? It's like, if you stick it out, you actually have financial freedom. You don't have to worry about managing your portfolio and what to buy and what to sell, and talking to all these like vulture managers who want to manage your money and all that. It's anyway. So,
but you put out a tweet this week, or maybe even yesterday, where you said it's almost like this is the year for Bitcoin. Yeah.
I do think 2024 is the year of mass adoption. I mean, of course, we'll only know 20 years from now when we look back, like, oh, that was the tipping point. And I've been talking about this for a while. For a while, I thought it was going to be 2020, 2021, because I was looking at the parallels with internet adoption, where we're at that 9%. And we actually tipped below it again, I think, at least for Bitcoin in the bear market. But yeah, I do think we're at that threshold of about 10% of the people that... Sorry, and the parallel that I'm talking about is 1995. People look back and say that was the year for the internet, the breakthrough year, mass adoption. Windows 1995, everybody got hooked up. And so that was the number of how many households in the US hooked up the internet, 9%.
The ETFs like the AOL disc.
I feel like it. Yeah, because everybody already has a brokerage account through their bank, or most people. So it's just a click of the mouse. Now you don't have to go through all the KYC anymore and deal with a scary new startup, right? You just go with your So I think psychologically it's huge, this ETF thing.
It's kind of funny. We talked about at the start, like the free market stepping in. Like if you want to cut that budget, what will happen? And the food banks did their thing, and you talked about the charity shops, so they did their thing. Like it's all, sometimes I think, we're so lucky to have Bitcoin when all this craziness is going on. It's kind of the hope and the potential. But really, it's also, that is the free market stepping in and saying, we need an alternative. When you go to Argentina, it's very easy to explain Bitcoin to people. You go to Cambodia, it's very easy to explain Bitcoin to people. You go to Venezuela, it's very easy. It's a lot harder to tell somebody who's been kind of used to 2% inflation. They've had a little spike now. In their minds, they're like, that thing's super volatile and I'm too late. And I don't understand it. But now I think is the time where I'm feeling that change. And it's not just money. Like, people are fucking sick of this shit. And so Bitcoin's come along at the right time. And if 2024 is its year, we may look back at this in a decade or two and go, wow, that was a really important time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why, obviously I try to look at the charts and try to not fool myself, but I still think this is going to be a massive bull market. It's going to like set your hair on fire. Like, I think it's going to be kind of scary at times how fast this is going to move. Because you can also sense it in the defensiveness of people. Like New Harari, for example, you see he's trying to spin a narrative because I think they're anticipating. They know it's coming. And maybe they don't even consciously know, but I think a lot of so-called no-coiners or people who are very invested in the system, they feel that something's coming soon.
New Harari, was that the guy who was saying Bitcoin is money for people who don't have trust?
Yes.
Yeah, I completely agreed with most of what he said.
Yeah.
Like, he nailed it.
He nailed it, except he added, no, that's wrong. Because you should invest your trust in the government.
Yeah.
Right? Because we can then do good stuff with it. That's what he's saying. Instead of admitting, we've squandered your trust. And so, of course, you're going to build something better for yourself.
Well, this was there's a really good monk debate that was just had between Steve Bannon and, I want to say it's Chris Froome, the Canadian guy.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's really good. Really good debate. And it's about populism. And a lot of people believe populism is bad. And Steve Bannon talks about the populist movement as a good thing. But his real point is like, all you people who hate Trump, you created Trump. You're the fucking elites. You've bled out the working class jobs. You've bled out the middle class. You've enriched yourselves. You created Trump. You created the demand for Trump. Forget all his things that you disagree with him on. He is talking to the common man who has had his life destroyed by you fucking lot. So if you don't like this populism, you've got to take responsibility for what you did and change your course of action.
Yeah, and in a way, he's saying you created the vacuum.
Yes,
right? And of course it's going to get filled up by something. So then that's why. Like, honestly, I didn't realize that somebody like Milei could possibly get elected. I just never thought that was possible. Balancing the budget in 4 months time?
Yeah, the surplus, right? Yeah. Do you think that could happen in the US?
I don't know. It's it's hard to say. It needs to happen because otherwise, if you get more and more tribal, then you ultimately you have another civil war because there really are huge cultural differences within the U.S. And I think the only way to pacify all of the U.S. is just to say, like, let states do their thing. Let's let freedom reign.
I think RFK has proved there is demand for an alternative. Whether you agree with RFK or not, not relevant to the point I'm making, but he's currently independent. I don't know what percentage of the vote he's polling at, but he's proved there is demand for something new.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's true, and also Bitcoin is proving it. Like, Trump is literally saying, 50 million people in the US have crypto. We're gonna protect them. Like, that means they could be the swing vote. Bitcoin could define the election.
Oh man, I got on my Twitter and I saw the Ross Ulbricht thing, which obviously we share a deep desire for Ross to be free. And I saw that, I thought, wow, what a moment. Like the probable president, the previous president is saying, if you vote for me, I will commute Ross Ulbricht. And I was like,
He didn't just say that, he said on day one,
yes, on day one.
right?
And I mean, look, whether or not he's just doing it for votes or he actually fundamentally agrees, I don't give a shit. The president is talking about Ross Ulbricht, which is incredible. And then the next video came out where I didn't see the 50 million. It wasn't just that he said, I'm going to keep away Elizabeth Warren and her goons, and I'm going to make the US the place for crypto and your Bitcoin so it doesn't go abroad. I thought that was great. But it's the fact that he went, I'm going to protect your right for self-custody.
Literally said self-custody, yes.
President Trump said self-custody.
Yeah.
It blew my mind. Big up David Bailey for all the work you've been doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, and to me, that is, I think, a lot of what unifies the U.S. is that like strong streak of independence, self-sovereignty, and so if you can tap into that, I think that can go a long way to maintain the peace in this great continent, country.
It's a very American idea. I've talked about this since I started the pod. Is it Bitcoin and the property rights of Bitcoin and self-custody are like a very American idea.
Yeah.
And so to see Trump, I mean, look, RFK put out a brilliant tweet yesterday of all Trump's criticisms, and the majority of them are fair. They are fair. And I'm sure Trump could do the same with RFK, and they can both do the same for Biden. Let's be honest, they're all shit. But I think if Trump comes in and wipes out Elizabeth Warren and her goons and does actually legislate energy neutrality, right to self-custody, maybe even goes a step further, some form of right to financial privacy, I think that, personally, I'm obviously going to say this, I think it's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, it would be awesome, Oh, by the way, it makes me think of the book I wanted to give you.
Oh,
This is my copy. I haven't had time to buy a new one, but it's what's the title again?
Sam Houston and the Alamo Avengers: The Texas Victory That Changed America's History.
Yeah, and there's a lot of books on the Texas Revolution and the Alamo and things like that. But what I liked about this one, and I'm definitely no expert, but it is that he picks a line. Like, he's not going to say, oh, there's 5 theories about what happened here. Like, he writes it like a novel. He just kind of is your guide through the story, and so it makes it read like a train, and it makes you have so much like awe, really, like for what happened here. Like the people have called this like the modern day Thermopylae, like the modern day this standoff. Like it was so heroic and unique and incredible, and also how it fits in the history of Texas is incredible.
What happened? What's the?
Well, I mean, basically the initially Texas was like a little back province of Mexico, and Mexico wanted for people to go there to kind of keep the Indians out, because the Comanche especially were very, very savage, and they would go on raids, and they would raid deep into Mexico even. So that was like a way to have a buffer zone. And so you had these Anglo-Saxon immigrants who would just settle there, I think in the 1820s. And so they would basically create a little community. I think up until 1840, there were less than 40,000 people like that in Texas. It was super tiny. But so gradually, Mexico started becoming more and more dictatorial and wanted prevent them from. They wanted Mexican judges to rule and all that. And so the Texans were like, we don't want that. So initially, for a long time, they were basically saying, we just want to be a state inside of Mexico. But then gradually it became clear that it was just not compatible. And they were like, no, we actually want independent. And so the Alamo was part of that going for independence and saying, look, we're going to occupy this place and call it our own, and say like no further, like, you know, we're not going to be intimidated by your army. And then so Santa Anna came, which was the military general, I think, and there was a standoff, and he had an overwhelming majority of soldiers, and everybody died. I mean, I think one of the things that happened was the evening before the final battle, the commander drew a line in the sand and said, like, you know, there were about 200 people there. He said, look, you don't have to do this, but if you are with us, like, step across the line. And so only one guy was like, I don't want to fight. And then he actually survived. He was one of the few to tell the tale. And so not only was everybody killed, but they put all the bodies on a pile and burnt them. Like, there was really a scorched earth, very grueling. And so then that kind of, you know, remember the Alamo, there was such outrage among the other Texians that it really rallied the revolution. So if the Alamo hadn't happened, the entire history of Texas might have been different. But so yeah, just that, like, and a lot of these guys were, in a way, they were trying to build a new life. They weren't born there. They came from elsewhere. Some of them were drunks or you know, they had a rough life. And so it's just so, to me, it just gives me goosebumps, the idea that you can just reinvent your own life. And everywhere around us, like, it's Travis County that we're sitting in, like, all these names were all guys who either fought there or were part of the revolution, that small gang of people. And so I don't know, I just feel like it's a story that deserves to be known more widely, like beyond just the little catchphrase of like, oh, come and take it, and, you know, remember the Alamo. Like, it's, you know, of course you can discuss it. This is a Fox guy who wrote it, and maybe he's biased in some ways, but it's very richly sourced. It has a lot of source material in the back. So I thought it was incredible to read it.
Well, thank you. I will read it. Is this why Texas has it's so independent? It's almost like a country within America.
And it was a country for a little while, right? Yeah, no, I think that's that spirit, right? It comes from, I mean, also the kind of people who live here are the same people that live across the Appalachian Mountains, and that ended up, you know, Austin is kind of the furthest point. And they originated from Ireland, from Northern England, so that, like, literally the Braveheart DNA already was there. Yeah.
What's the lesson for today?
Well, I mean, Texas actually originally meant friendly people, and so I don't know. I've grown. One of the things that I've learned as a European is to kind of drop some of my prejudice, and that people can have, you know, a scary gun on their holster, and be friendly, and sometimes the two actually go together. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Bitcoin, it's similar. Like, we talk about Bitcoin as like being the cyber hornets, and they're mean, and, you know, but, like, I think there is a two sides of the same coin. Like, if somebody has that autonomy, they're more confident and they're more friendly, and we can have more community. And I don't know, I need to think about this more, but I feel like there's something there where there's heart in this story, and I think we can learn from it. Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate it. I would definitely read it. I'll try and read it while I'm here in Texas. Sit out there, get some sunshine.
I think it's like 3-hour read, or maybe a little more. Yeah, I read it in a week, I think.
Oh, I'm on it.
No, it should be more, but it's a fast read.
Well, anyway, how have you been? What's the plan now for you? I hear you're launching a podcast. I know you're launching a podcast.
Oh,
you're joining us.
Damn.
Can I announce that?
Yes. I mean, I honestly, we don't have we're building the studio, yes. And I thought about it for a long time, because I had another plan. I was going to do a newsletter first. Mm-hmm. And I ended up deciding that I already know what's going to happen. If I do a newsletter, subscription-based, I'm going to feel very much like I need to give people their money worth, and I'm going to become more like a hermit, and I'm going to be very stressed trying to meet my deadlines. And I really also enjoyed talking to people and and learning from people. And I love building bridges as well from Bitcoin to other places, because ultimately we'll just be big and boring. We'll just be part of society. And so there's so many interesting people in the world that I want to talk to, so that's the thinking. Yeah.
You're gonna have,
and also Austin is such a great place to meet people in person, you know.
There's a lot of good people to interview here, but you're gonna really enjoy it. It's honestly, everyone should start a podcast. It's brilliant. You learn so much from it. It's putting yourself out there, you're putting yourself out there in the public eye in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, you can just go and be an interviewer and just ask questions, or you can share your life as part of it and how that influences your questions.
Right.
But you're bearing your soul to the world.
Well, I feel bad stopping you, but I want to ask you all about that when we turn the tables.
All right. Well, listen, we will do that, but I feel so lucky I did it. It's like I often feel like I feel like I'm in a simulation because I shouldn't be this lucky in life to live the life I'm living now and have lived. It shouldn't happen. And there's so much synchronicity that my like crazy friend Louise would be like, that's the universe. I just think it's coincidences. But like,
and it's been less than 10 years. I remember meeting you in San Francisco in 2017. This is less than 10 years.
That was the year I launched. Yeah, 7 years. I feel like I'm on the final stretch of it though. Like I won't be here in another 10 years.
Yeah.
I won't be getting on planes. I won't be doing that in 5 years. Sometime in the next year, 2-3 years, I'm going to be done. You know, I've got a job to do
You
at
did
home.
a lot of travel. A lot.
I mean, the dedication to do it in person is right. This conversation we had remote, it's a production line. It's formality. This is a personal interview experience with emotion. And you know, we can sense each other and feel each other out, and you know, we can look at the screen and it's an experience in person. I feel super lucky, and I will talk about that with you on yours. But what I'd say is you're going to go on some journey. It's the best. My one piece of advice: do not do remote interviews. Do it all in person. You're better off. If you don't need to commercialize it, certainly in the short term, you're better off finding someone around here that you don't know, that nobody else knows, and sitting across them and find out about their life and an interesting story they can tell, than interviewing, I don't know, Saifedean over Zoom.
Yeah.
The in-person thing is what makes a podcast incredible. The people listening, you're inviting them into this room that you're in to live that experience with you. On Zoom, you're delivering something from a factory. That's my thing. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We will talk about that.
I still owe you something.
Do you? What do you mean?
Yeah, the second part.
Oh shit! Yeah, Danny mentioned this. Fuck. Yeah. Okay. Right, listeners. If you didn't listen to the last show me and Tuur made, it's fucking nuts. He went on an Ibogaine retreat. It is the most nuts story. Danny said you went and did it again.
Yes. Remember how I told you? I was like, I'm considering doing it again.
Oh no.
Yes. Yeah, and it wasn't just like, oh, let's go there again. It was because I still had a lot of questions. Because when I talked to you guys about it, I mean, I don't know, for people who missed it, it basically involved a 30-hour psychedelic trip where I didn't sleep for 2 days and eat for 3 days. I signed out of the clinic against doctor's orders. I escaped to the airport. I was tripping for 8 hours in the airports. I thought the world was taken over by aliens. I thought I was going to die that very same day. Like, yeah, it was. And I remember talking about it with you then. Like, I was still like, oh, like it was coming back. It's the most intense thing that I ever did. Yeah. And so
you went, fuck it, let's do it again.
Well, the thing was that I was like, where is this story coming from? Because I like to be in that psychosis delusion for 24 hours, constantly believing aliens are taking over the planet. I kept wondering, like, where does it come from? Like, is there some kind of internal trauma that's coming up? And then sometimes I would get a little bit paranoid and be like, maybe there's a whole bunch of other Ibogaine guys who have the exact same. So I would try to find them, right? And so eventually I was like, I had some thoughts of what it could be, but I was like, I think I need to go there again and try to create some different circumstances that are a safer environment, lower dose, working with more experienced people, that kind of thing.
Different clinic?
I worked with different people, yeah.
Same clinic?
Yeah. No, different people.
Okay.
Not that clinic, yeah. And so did a lot of prep, a lot of phone calls, a lot of kind of trying to get the set and setting really right. My wife ended up being there with me.
Okay.
Yeah. Also the one thing that I
shout.
did find out, which I may have mentioned in the previous time we talked about this, is that they did not give me a test dose. Which apparently is really kind of very, very common in the Ibogaine world, that they do give you a test dose because people's bodies respond differently in their minds. And so it turns out that they did not give me a test dose, and they give me a large dose. I don't know whoever knows about this world, but 1.1 grams of pure HCl is what it's called. That's a large dose. And so I was kind of like, I dove into the ravine, whereas this time apparently there are more and more people that are starting to work with Ibogaine with a more gentle protocol where you administer. It's all oral, so it's very simple. You just ingest it. You administer it over a period of 5 hours, 6 hours. So you just gently go into it, which you can do because it's very active for a long time. It's not like MDMA or something where it's over in a couple hours. And so I took it very slowly, and I ended up stopping at about 1/3 of the dose that I took 1 year ago.
Okay.
But still, in the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be better and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, physically, it wasn't as harrowing. It was still, the thing is, it makes you lay still, like, cause you get nauseous very easily. It makes you very still. So you just lay in bed for a long time, but it felt again like this torturous experience where I didn't talk for the first 5 hours, not very much at all. And then I went back into this same paranoia, the same paranoia, like the same story too. Like it's aliens and it's this and that. And
did you start emailing? Did they give you your phone?
No.
Good.
No. That was all taken care of. And I got to say, one of the differences was I did feel some less despair. I was a bit less despairing. I brought my diary because after like 5 hours in, I was, because I took less, I was able to like write and things. And so I asked her after, I was like, how long did I go back into this thing? And she's like, 17 hours. It's like for 17 hours, I was just like, and then every 30 minutes, like writing down a line that was like proof that, or, it wasn't just that.
Did you write some crazy shit?
Well, I mean, little things like alien abduction stories also involve nausea, amnesia, and a warm, glowy feeling after. Because I was like trying to think, like maybe I was abducted when I was a child or something, or like, and then I was like, oh, what's in it for them? And
you're killing me, man.
It just goes on and on and on and on. Yeah, all that stuff. But I'm glad I have a record because now because part of the weird thing was, with the huge trip. I mean, I guess I have the emails that I send out to everyone. Oh, that's another thing I didn't tell people. But in the nighttime, I got access to my phone last year, and I emailed 20 people with crazy emails.
I know. I was upset I wasn't on the email list.
Yeah, right. I think it's maybe because your name starts with a P, and that's the end of the alphabet, and I made it to half of the alphabet.
So you must have got Adam.
Oh yeah, totally. Adam was one of them. Yeah. So this time around, I just had paper, and so gradually, I did feel like I trusted my wife the whole way through. Because last time I thought she was a robot. That's how far I went. I thought she was totally already infested by the alien virus. But so yeah, this time it was more despair, and then gradually feeling like angry, and like I felt violated, and I'm trying to think, what was one of the last things that I wrote, and so I was basically saying that this substance, it's like it keeps punishing you if you are distracted, if you don't do what it wants. Its stick behind the door is mortifying panic coming from or induced by insanely deformed screaming faces in combination with hints of excruciating pain and nausea that multiplied by forever. So that was like my memory of it was like,
what?
So like,
why do you keep doing this?
Yeah. So anyway, so that was also like, why? And also I was angry at the people that helped me, do it again. And I asked my wife to swear to never, ever, ever, ever do that herself. And anyway, so I basically landed again somewhere in the afternoon of the next day and became totally sober again. The paranoia went away. And then I just went to bed at night. And I had even predicted it. Part of what I was so angry about is like, I know that, by the time I'm landing, I'm going to be laughing about this again. And like, God damn it. But so anyway, I landed and I felt like in a way I still didn't have answers. Like, what happened? So I went to bed, and then at around 4 a.m. or 3 a.m., I woke up and I had some anxiety, which is weird because after an Ibogaine trip, it's like you're like 6 years old. Like you're like a baby. Like you feel so pure and your anxiety is totally at a zero. It's so zen. So I was like waking up, it's like I was like at a 2 or 3 on a scale of 10. I was like, what is this anxiety? And I one thing that I sensed was I had some sensitivity to my lip. And also during the Ibogaine trip, I forgot to mention, my lip was numb for hours on end, my bottom lip. So I was like, what is this thing? And then I remembered I used to have this flashback, even back when I was a teenager, of somehow laying in the bed, maybe a hospital bed, a weird taste in my mouth, what looked like hospital lights, maybe people in white suits, just something I never really was able to make sense of. And so this time around, I was like, okay, I'm so relaxed, but I feel like there's something about this flashback. So let me just go into it. So I laid down, and there was this psychologist called Peter Levine. I think his book is called The Tiger Within or something. Basically, he has a method of dealing with when you have something like that happen, when you have a flashback or trauma that comes up. And what he says is what you want to do is you want to make the physical movements that you wish you could have done in that moment, but extremely slow. And I had been, trying that over the years. So I was like, all right, let me try that. And so I started moving extremely slowly, getting out of the bed, and then extremely slow, and did it a few times, walking to the door, and eventually, and like I said, it was very vivid. Like it's hard to describe, but it was basically really a flashback. Went to the door, eventually made it to the kitchen, and I cried so hard, and it was such a relief. And this is really, at least to me, what brings it all together. Is like this is the conclusion I couldn't get to because the year before when I did it, then it was so chaotic, and I had so much adrenaline in my system that I couldn't do the flashback and revisit that and get closure. And so yeah, I mean, there's of course there's more to it, but it really, since then, it's been months now, my anxiety has been so much lower compared to what feels like my whole life.
Okay.
Like really significantly lower. And it affects everything. Like my sleep is better, I drive better, my memory's better, just everything. And so that's kind of what I feel like this substance has done, is like, in a way, it showed me for a long period of time, like 17 hours, like slowly what that trauma was. Somehow, I mean, this might be pre-verbal even, like who knows? My parents actually told me that when I was very young, I went to the hospital for something, and maybe that was extremely scary, and I was never able to actually deal with that. And so and so I think what maybe psychedelics in general can do is like it kind of can bring you back and show what it felt like, and then that way afterwards you can just kind of process it as an adult and be like, let's think about this. And so I'm really happy that I did it again. I feel like so much closure and relief. And
are you done with Ibogaine?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Like it really, yeah, I don't feel like there's, maybe, who knows, maybe years from now, but I feel like it did its job.
Yeah, you still, second time in, you still haven't sold it to me. It sounds horrific.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, no, but it's the catharsis. It's like sometimes I think it's like that with trauma in general. Like you sometimes you need to open the closet and face what you're afraid of. To it's like, what do they call it? Skeletons in the closet.
Yeah.
Like you let them out. Like let it air. And I do, it was a lot more gentle than the first time. I mean, really, like the nausea was so much less. And so I don't think this, I think they were amateurs basically, the way they treated me, and they maybe that's how somebody kicks heroin after 20 years, but I don't think I needed that.
Yeah. I'm not sold.
Oh, I'm not trying to sell you. Yeah,
But I like your stories.
yeah.
I like
No,
your
and
stories.
honestly, I think also there is an aspect of generational trauma. Because I think it's tempting when you think about trauma to be like, well, what's the one thing that's been, bothering me my whole life? That one memory, if I can just deal with that. But I think definitely in Flanders, there's just a lot of war trauma, like World War One, World War Two, and being in occupied territory, you're so in survival mode, and you're always trying to not say the wrong thing because you could literally be executed for it. So I think that crept into the culture, and I kind of inherited a bunch of that, and so I think that's part of what I've been able to do too, is like let some of that go. Be like, the Germans are not around the corner, that kind of thing.
You're nuts, man. I love it. Right. Well, listen, man, always a pleasure to talk to you. I've done it how many times we've done it over the years, but I really appreciate it. And it's really kind of you to bring me this. And I guess we're going to, I don't know which order the shows will come out, but I'm going to come on yours.
I think you'll be first.
By the way, I'm a terrible guest.
I disagree.
I think I'm a terrible guest, but I look forward to recording with you. Don't ask me about Bitcoin. I'll talk about podcasts.
Plenty of other stuff to talk about.
Love you, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate this. And
Same.
See you soon.
Yep.
See you later, everybody.